Welcome to the Beyond Body podcast with your hosts, Mia and Holly. Join us for a sometimes fortnightly podcast
where we explore all things mental health, being a messy human, and how to get the most out of this one precious life.
and all the ridiculous stories in between. Welcome back, Hol. We are back together. We had a little bit of a guest ep. How do you feel being back?
Oh my God, I'm so excited to be back. It's so nice coming back to our little fortnightly. It just feels like a little cup of tea with the girls.
Yes. I always look forward to it. It's always good to see you, but always great to see the people. And today we're going to be talking about something that I know a lot of the people experience, which is body image issues, body image dissatisfaction, body image distress. And obviously last episode we were having a chat to Steph Damiano about body image as it relates to kids. So we thought this would be a good opportunity to dive into a little bit of our body image story and some tips for body image. We're going to go to a few different places, I think. How are you feeling about diving into the body image side of things? I can't believe we haven't talked about this before.
I know when you suggested, I was like, no, we've done it. I was like, no, we actually haven't spoken about it. I think obviously because, every week within our client sessions, this is a topic that's going to come up. I think, I could count on one hand the amount of people I've worked with whom body image isn't an issue for them, right? I think it's such a big eating disorder or not, body image generally, whether that's good, bad, you're dissatisfied or not, it's a part of everyone's life, and it's not by any means a groundbreaking topic we're talking about today, but I think a big way in which we relate to this community is through having this shared experience of this is our understanding, and then being able to look at sort of our own struggles with it, but then also offering a bit of a path forwards. So I think this is a really useful topic for the people, let me say, just to understand body image also through our experiences.
Yes. And at Beyond Body, we're very, very passionate about working through body image stuff with people, not just towards the end of their recovery journey, but all the way through, which we might get into a little bit today. Because when I was recovering, I would always hear, we've got to wait until the end to work on body image stuff. And I was like, how is that possible? This is one of the most distressing parts of the process. How is there nothing? So, and I come from kind of that body neutrality, practical intervention, which I know that you're adept at as well, but you also have a real passion for embodiment. So I think that our two areas of passion in the body image space really work together really nicely, because it's about, yes, reducing the distress and helping your recovery along, but it's also then about and then how do you want to relate to your body?
Yes, exactly. And I think because of that, because so many people are sort of told, oh, no, it just is something that you're going to have to figure out at the end. You can't sort of tangibly work on it. I think it just gives a lot of people this sense of hopelessness, particularly if you're working with, let's say 2 decades of conditioning of having these attitudes towards certain body types, and that just continues to be reinforced, and you're not really seeing this way out through recovery at first. It can feel incredibly distressing. I think even adding the distress on top of the body image dysfunction that someone is likely already feeling.
Yes, absolutely. So if we sort of do a little bit of time traveling, what is a bit of your body image story? What are your earliest memories of relating to your body or your sense of your body? Was it something that came about in teenage years? Is it something that you were conscious of as a child? What do you remember?
It's such an interesting thing to reflect on. And I would really urge everyone listening to actually really reflect on it, because it can feel a bit, striking and stark and maybe emotional thinking about these things. But, we developed these attitudes towards our body for a reason. So it's used, so much of recovery is about just understanding your experience on a deeper level and not shying away from some of the things that feel hard. And I think often this is one of those areas. But for me, negative body image from a young age, I think my earliest memories of feeling dissatisfied with my body were maybe 5 or 6. And it was just, my experience was, it was a huge aspect that influenced my desire to lose weight a little bit further on when I was a teenager. Because I absolutely had these attitudes towards bodies. And I really think I, unconsciously as a small child internalized a lot of fat phobia towards myself, because it, in reflection, my very normal developing child body size, I perceived as completely outrageous, and I then therefore really understood myself to be inherently unattractive and and had this like personal blame for my weight. And I think
Yeah.
because of that, I felt lesser than other people. But just even thinking about like, gosh, that is just so much for a young person to hold, particularly when they're so far away from having the developed brain to be able to articulate that deep suffering behind the daily, protection of attempted cool schoolgirl.
Yeah.
But I think this is why it's so important for people to like this question you just asked me, to first really become aware of like what are your attitudes about your body? Because, I felt shame about my body from a really young age. And I think so much happened from that moment. And I
Yes.
often wonder, what insignificant comments from my sweet early years, like what did they actually solidify in my psyche about what bad meant,
Mm, mm.
But I absolutely, had an upbringing that was, super supportive, and I'm super grateful for that. But I also think it was a different time, I think there was more of a focus and also unawareness of the damage that it can cause, talking about people's bodies or mentioning people's bodies or creating these sort of separate groups of what is good and what is bad, even, in like school sport and things, not
Yeah.
being chosen. And I even think like looking, trying to look at it from like my parents' lens, even like they just wanted us kids to, be safe. And often that meant that changing our bodies was a way that they thought that they would achieve that. So I absolutely, had support from parents being like, oh, you want to diet? Cool. This is what you want. If this is going to make you feel good, we can do that. So I also had sort of like that reinforcement that like this is what I should be doing.
Mm. Yeah, I had very, very similar experiences as far as kind of that social, parental, familial kind of like enabling of all of these thoughts. It may
Yes.
not have started with them, but they kind of supported those negative thoughts you had about yourself. Like, oh, it is my responsibility to change my body so I don't get teased and get bullied because my parents are saying, oh, yes, if you lose weight, that will reduce that and will help you do that. Absolutely. That I so
Mhm.
share in that experience. And similar to you, it was very, very young age. I don't really have memories of feeling very at home with my body or connected to my body from a very young age because I was, mum still tells the story about how long I was, how big my head was. I was a big baby. I was a long baby. I was a tall baby. What a shocker. So there was a lot of commentary on my body. I think even before I would have known it was going on, and then it just kind of continued. And I
Yes.
remember being very, very young, being a toddler, and my cousin, who was about 18 months older than me, being picked up by my uncle in one arm and me in the other, and him making this big deal about how much heavier I was, even though I was much younger than my cousin. And not that it was a negative, but it was just like this point of difference that was shocking, and everyone laughing and thinking that this was hysterical. And of course, as little ones, like we just think, well, I just don't want to be different. Steph actually said something really interesting in the last episode where she said, kids kind of just want to hit the middle. They don't want to be at the bottom of the totem pole. They don't want to be tall poppy either. They just want to kind of hang in there. They want to go unnoticed a lot of the time in these ways.
Yeah.
So there was just a lot of commentary all the time about my body, neutral, negative, positive, or otherwise. And then I was one of those kids who got weighed in school. And that was the first time I was like, oh, wow, the number compared to my girlfriends is a lot higher.
Mm.
And having no explanation for that, like they didn't explain it and we wouldn't have understood it even if they did explain it. Uh, and so it was just this constant reinforcement that I was different. And then heading towards puberty age and boys starting to notice those key
Mm.
difference between boys and girls, lots and lots of teasing. There was this one boy who's actually ended up being a really successful musician. So when people are like, don't worry, your bullies will like they're not going to get ahead in life. And then
Bad
it's like
karma.
mine became a like really successful musician and apparently a really good guy now. So I will like hopefully that's true. But on the way to like sport, he would get a stick and he would hit me on the back of my legs really hard and like call me terrible names like thunder thighs and like trying to encourage me to run. Um, and it was like it's awful. It's so awful. And but as you say, like different time, that was literally treated like, well, of
Well,
course he's doing that because you're like a larger kid. And I
so
wasn't just
different.
that. at that age, I wasn't just taller. I was in a larger body during my childhood years and some of my teen years as well.
Mm.
And so it was the same as you, like, oh, this is my responsibility. This is my job, and I've failed in some way. So the way to avoid this kind of rejection and judgment and like literally being assaulted with a stick is to do something about it myself. Like it's not that
Yeah.
everyone else's attitudes or beliefs have to change. It's my responsibility to change it. And similarly, like,
Yeah.
parents encouraging more exercise and eating quote unquote healthier and all that sort of stuff, which in context I have total understanding for. But yeah, it just comes back to that whole concept of, we didn't have there was just no alternative message. There weren't outfits like Butterfly with the messages they've got and advice for parents about neutral language about bodies and food. And there just was no, of course, we felt that we had to do these things to keep ourselves safe because there was literally no one saying anything else.
Oh my God, absolutely. And I feel like when I reflect on my experience, I was just sitting with this like huge dissatisfaction of my body for a long time, but I didn't realize that it was like I could change, I could do something about it until
Mhm.
maybe those teen years. And I was like, oh, I actually maybe don't have to feel like this. And this is the method. This is
Yeah.
now the way to alleviate this suffering. And I think from that, it kind of like created this really deep promise that I had, like, oh, if I have a different body, cool, I'm going to get the different life. Like, cool, like this is going to be awesome. As if it's like that old quote, if you just like hate yourself enough, you're going to get a different life, as if like hate ever led to love and happiness. But unfortunately, millions and millions of people have had to learn that the hard way, and I think as a young child, when you have these incidences, they truly make you feel like your weight or how your body looks or whatever your face looks, whatever it is, whatever your insecurity is, that is the root cause problem, right, of your life.
Mhm.
And I think that's, how we're talking a couple of episodes about sort of that belief of I'll be happier when. I think it's
Yeah.
from these experiences that, we become these like hopeless disciples of the belief I'll be happier when, I will find love when, life will make sense when. And I think that those experiences that really create these like this like in really in-depth framework for what we believe about ourselves, they're some of like the most significant cognitive blocks that I think we come that we meet with clients where they're like, well, this is just how I think and this is just how I believe and this is just what, this is how I'm going to perceive myself forever. So I think that is where the body image work in recovery is so important. And it's so much more than just like changing how you feel about yourself or like talking to yourself differently, because I think body image, it brings up so many layers of work that needs to be addressed, often therapeutically as well.
Yeah.
And we like absolutely have the behavioral skills for you, but like we know, anyone who, the goal is to make lasting behavioral change. A huge part of that is also understanding the why behind the changes. Why am I actually talking to myself differently when I'm looking in the mirror? Why am I actually trying to do something different? What is the meaning behind this? And the meaning is to be able to, see that young version of you who was bullied at a young age and actually kind of show her that, hey, there actually is a different way to view the world. Your worldview can completely change with the work that we're doing now through body image.
Yes. And it's, as you said, like it's why it's so key to have clients investigate this stuff. And it's why I come from the philosophy of lean in. Like when your eating disorder says, well, my body's going to change and it's going to, and sometimes your instinct as a coach can be to like go, oh, but it's okay. And it's like, well, let's go there. Let's explore,
Totally.
lean in. Okay. Then what's going to happen? And what's that going to mean? And in all the key and important areas of your life, if your body changes in this way you currently fear, what's going to happen to you? And it all harks back to the beginning of these body image stories, which is lack of belonging, lack of acceptance, fear of criticism. And not just because you've made it up and it's something you think could happen, it's probably happened to you before. And your brain, in a very clever way, goes, that was really painful. In fact, that really feels like it threatens my safety because I was a child or I was a teenager, or it could be something that was really traumatic that happened to your body.
Yeah.
Your brain says, okay, well, let's do everything humanly possible to prevent that thing from happening again, which threatens our safety or survival. And then your eating disorder latches onto that and ironically then starts to become the biggest threat, obviously. But it's why it's so important to go back and investigate the the root system, because we can deal with all the symptoms on top, but unless we change how you relate to those things differently, you have another difficult body image period or something which triggers some of those previous experiences you had, and you're just leaving this huge area of vulnerability that you just don't have to, and you just don't have to be distressed as much as you maybe think is normal currently.
Absolutely. And then I think which just adds another layer of complexity to it is that, then collectively there's this illusion that safety through, via like with ideals via consumer culture that, we've been sold it our entire lives, buy this, do this, and then you're going to feel safe in your body because you're going to change your body and that's going to give you this perceived sense of safety. Don't trust yourself, trust these set of rules. They'll keep you safe and loved and accepted. And I think because there's then also this reinforcement of, consumer culture and diet culture and all these aspects, that is then like 100% in support of the eating disorder, being like, yeah, like cool, like totally what you're doing is like normal and it's the thing that's going to achieve safety. And I also think this is why so many people struggle to do this work because like it's fucking hard, you have to dig up some really yuck stuff and kind of like deconstruct this building of what you believe. And so, and you are required to challenge so much conditioning. And look, it's hard and it's a laborious and tiring task. And it's, it's frightening because people feel like they're losing a sense of safety, right?
Yeah.
And everyone deserves to feel safe. It's also like lonely and expensive, I would say. But it's kind of those things anyway, I think that like quest, which is ultimately what it is, right? It's like a quest for worth. It's doing all those things anyway, right now believing that you're not actually enough, that is laborious and tiring. So I think the work of body image is to ask you to see if we can approach self, body, food in a different way that ultimately is going to give you a different outcome.
Yes, it's sometimes I like refer to it as like the warm lie. It's this warm lie of the promise of what that body will bring or what the pursuit of those things will bring. And it's really comforting. Even if you never get it, just the fantasy of like what could be is so warming because it's like there's this hope and there's this promise down the track if I just do enough to earn it. And again, even if you never get there, it's just the safety of like life could be simpler, life could be more manageable in this really, and I will be perfect and I will never have anxiety again and I will not fear rejection and judgment. And even if you never get there, it feels really great to think that a world like that exists versus our work, which is to be like, well, you're never going to stop being human. And these things are very, very human. We don't want to be experiencing the extreme of them. Like, of course, it's human to fear judgment and rejection.
Yeah.
It's not adaptive or normal, whatever normal is, as we know, to fear it to the extent that you reject yourself to the point where you are absolutely in harm's way a lot of the time, right? So it's about releasing a little bit of the lie and the myth of what maybe that body represents or the pursuit of that body represents, and realizing that if we do get to the core of what your eating disorder is trying to help you attain or protect, those things like belonging and safety, etc. Let's say that your eating disorder can't even provide those things. Does it have the patent on it? Is that the only way to access those things? Because if that were true, then the diverse range of bodies we see in the world of people who do have access to love and belonging and success and connection, all these things, they wouldn't exist. It's like when people come to my account and I understand it and I don't judge it in any way because I do understand it. When they say, well, Mia, you didn't recover into X body, so it's easy for you to say that about body image. And I'm like, well, that would only work if there were literally no other diverse bodies out there demonstrating these amazing lives, which totally counteract this belief that you have that it's only accessible in, certain body sizes, this life that you want. So yeah, there's so many different facets to it as far as like how we challenge those things. But the body image story exploration, I think, is so important because the way that we frame that is everything, right? Body image is not just looking in a mirror and going, what do I look like and how do I feel about it? It's all the experiences you've had in that body. It's the influences around you that tell you about bodies, both close to you and on a societal level. It's your marginalizations, it's intersectionality, it's so many different things that you are literally kind of subconsciously telling yourself with all these different visual and sometimes somatic interactions with your body. it's complex. It's really, really complex. It's a relationship you're working on.
Exactly. And I think that real complexity there, a big part of that is also realizing that this is, this is a foundational lesson learned in recovery, is that how you feel about yourself is not fixed, right? So you could have all the information and you really understand what influences your body image, but that doesn't mean it's going to feel the same every day. And it's not supposed to. Your inner landscape is always going to be in flux and flow. And that means that, sometimes you might feel a mix of I'm feeling okay in my body and not so okay. And sometimes you might feel hell cute. And then sometimes you might, I don't know, feel like the physical expression of a dropped pie. And that's also okay. I think the work is to learn to be with the harder days of body image, those days where the eating disorder might be making these promises to make everything better by transporting you away from the feeling, right? That it deems as too hard to sit with. And I think that's when the beliefs that really change someone to that like desperate endeavor to change their body to achieve the ideal. That's when it's really a problem, because you miss the opportunity to learn to simply just experience the hard feelings, and if you don't get to feel them, you don't get to learn that they actually end. So I think so much of this is also about emotional tolerance, right? If you never allow them to end because you try to get rid of them with behaviors which might offer, that short-term relief or experience of disassociation, that's suppression. It's not processing, and those feelings don't go away, they just get pushed down. And I think it kind of comes back to the idea of if you keep doing the same thing you've always done, you're going to get the same result. So the work of body image is asking you to do something different, and it's not supposed to feel great, you're just supposed to feel.
Yes, I think that really helping people very early on in the coaching process get some reasonable expectations of what body image is going to look like and feel like long term, because they'll harbor these secret wants and wishes of like, I just want to love my body and accept my body every day. That's just never going to happen for anyone who's never had an eating disorder and has arguably like the best body image. They're not going to feel the same way about their body every single day. It's impossible. And also when people say things like that, like, I just want to get to this fixed feeling about my body. I'm like, which one? The body you've got now or the one you'll have in 10 years, the one you have in 30 years? Like, this is an evolving thing that you have to, be flexible around, because it is flexible and it's going to have things like illness. Like when I went to recovery, since then, I have 2 chronic illnesses. I have a very different relationship with my body now. My body expresses itself. I experience my body in a very different way, even from like a medical, physical perspective. But people have this expectation because, yes, we can rewire how we think about food, how we feel about food, and that's going to stay pretty much where it is when we do the work, right? Because the food, like pizza's pizza, it's not going to change. The body is. So I try to let people explore the idea of body image is a spectrum. As you just mentioned, it's things like you indifferent to it, neutral to it, don't think about it a lot. Days when you're giving yourself like finger guns in the mirror, being like, hello, absolutely incredible, loving this outfit on you. Let's go and show the world this. We have to take this on tour. And sometimes when you're going to be like, I'm premenstrual, I feel like I'm like suffocating in my own body. I don't feel at home in it. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to be in it. You're going to have a variety of feelings. Most of the time we want to be in that neutral, indifferent. This, just doesn't factor that much. It's just not that much of a focus. But what's not normal is what the eating disorder and what body image dissatisfaction tacks on, which is this part of the spectrum, which is distressed. It is not normal to exist in a distressed area of body image. So what we're doing in recovery is we're kind of with time disconnecting that distressed end of the spectrum, getting you out of that, and then getting you accustomed to what does it feel like to experience an array of body image experiences. Because I think if we are teaching people to be robots about their body image, we are robbing them of some really important messages. Like when I'm having bad body image, it is telling me a lot about my hormones, my sleep, my stress, things I'm looking at, maybe people I'm interacting with who give me the ick, who I don't feel aligned with values-wise. It tells me a lot. I don't want to take those signals away from people, right? So just a little bit of a diatribe there as far as like expectation management with body image, because just like you don't have one feeling about people you're in relationship with, right? Like whether it's family or friends or romantic, sometimes you love people, but they're annoying the shit out of you. And you're like, I don't feel aligned with you at all. I still love you. I'm still going to respect you. I'm still going to take care of you, but we're not on the same page. And then other times you're going to feel super aligned. It's kind of
Mm.
like that with your body. It's not going to be one thing all the time, and it shouldn't be. It's a process and a relationship.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, it will go through so many different iterations, maybe day to day or maybe year to year, just as if it was like your relationship with a friend. If you don't communicate, well then yeah, like the way in which you're going to be able to like relate to each other, it's going to
Mhm.
change because there's not that sort of consistent forward back communication that makes you feel like, oh, I can kind of trust what my body is saying and like it can trust what I'm saying and like we're conversing really well. Like it's not necessarily effective communication if you know you're not talking to a friend for 5 years, right?
Yeah.
It's like your relationship with anyone, it requires work and time and effort, even if it's like with your mum or with a parent or partner. Like just because you know they're close and you know they're going to be there doesn't mean that you still don't make an effort in the relationship. And I think it's very useful to look at your relationship with your body in that exact same way.
Yeah, and give them some grace and forgiveness as well. Like like I've had some health stuff this year, which has been really, really challenging. Like there was like a month there where I couldn't really get out of bed. Like I would walk to the top of the stairs of my apartment block and I would be like, I have to turn around and go back. My body puts me through hell sometimes. It is awful. I don't hate it. It's doing with what it's been given genetically. My body didn't pick my genetics just as much as I didn't. It's doing its best, but I'm still allowed to be like, I'm pissed off at it today. I'm really cranky with my lot as far as like what my body does and what it's been given. As you say, that's seasonal, right? In that season, we're not
Yeah.
aligned. But then when we are aligned, it's moments of appreciation and gratitude. And like in this season, I'm going to enjoy this alignment with my body and not take it for granted because another season's going to come when we're not so aligned.
Yeah, exactly. And I think often if someone is experiencing that really distressing negative body image, often, and a way in which that is being reinforced is the way in which they're speaking to their body, right? Like it's just going to cause a further disconnection between mind and body. Because in that sense, like you and your body are not on the same team. And for you to recover from an eating disorder, you guys got to be on the same team, you know? And with someone who is on your team, you're not going to be only seeing them within the dynamics of like control, coercion, and force, you know? You actually have to start connecting with the body and realizing that that relationship is an imperative part of your healing to, you know, yourself and food and body, obviously. But at some point, because you know, in everyone's recovery, at some point you have to relate to your physical experience in this world, including your body, with new understanding and new perspective. And like you're saying, it doesn't mean that you and your body are always aligned, but even on your hard days where you're feeling like physically you're really struggling, you're still going to treat your body with respect. You're not going to be like, well, like literally, fuck you, I'm going to try control you because like you're being an asshole, you know? You're
Yes.
still going to like treat it with care because that is that, you know, so many people talk about self-love and it's like unattainable, totally get that, but self-respect is not. You know, self-respect is absolutely something that you can do every day for yourself, even on your harder days. I think it's when people get like, you know, so self-punitive with like their relationship towards their body. Like say they're having a hard day and like you're like literally the body is the punching bag, you know, whether you're not like nourishing yourself properly or you're just like completely disengaging and disassociating or whatever it is that like you guys like you know, I feel like most people, I would say most people in the world are quite kind people.
Mm.
You would never treat someone in the world like you treat your body, right? And I think even coming back to treat your body how you would treat another person, right? Like come back to the values, meaning part of it. I
Mm.
think if I reflect on my relationship with my body, how it sort of changed through recovery and sort of where it is at now,
Yeah.
I think, you know, when I first entered recovery, I would say even for like the first year, I was like just really doing the behavioral thing and, you know, but still very much like crying on the bathroom floor and just, I was actually slowly grieving that I would never be satisfied in my body. And I was like slowly starting to like be okay with that. Cause I was like, I mean, I can't do these behaviors anymore, but like, I guess I'm just gonna have to like hate my body forever. Like I had that, still had that sense of hopelessness.
Mm.
Because I really had this like deep belief that I would never be happy in the world if I was dissatisfied with my body as well. And it actually wasn't until I started really playing with the meaning piece of recovery, right? Like the embodiment piece, the presence piece, where I kind of felt forced to find engagement in the world and things to occupy my life that gave me a sense of calm, of connection, and just really a respite from that really intense effort that was required to be challenging a lot of the eating disorder thoughts all the time. And for me, that looked like learning to meditate, learning to cook, and or just being okay sitting and doing not much at all, or like, deep conversations, whatever it was. And all these things, I think, slowly helped me understand that, hey, maybe there actually is a way to feel some of these positive, heightened experiences of life that I desire without them having to have literally anything to do with my body, because I think that's where the magic really is. Like, just like with food, you want your approach to your body to take proper perspective in your life. And I think from there, when your life starts being colored with all these other aspects, that like intense urgency to change your body, it naturally will be diluted.
Yes. Yeah. When I allowed myself or often forced myself to go to social things or to reconnect with people when I was going through like a process of my body obviously changing because of recovery, and just 100% of the time it went way better than I ever could have expected. Like when that's part of the issue of an eating disorder isolating you, and particularly isolating you with some of these body image beliefs and what makes you valuable and what makes you worthy, is that it becomes so believable. Things that if you said them out loud or if you heard somebody else say them, you go, absolutely not. So putting myself in situations, as you say, where it was more about looking at what is the connection that I'm experiencing here? Like what is the actual substance of the experience like when I'm not focused on the body? And then can I see that that's being reflected back to me, that this other person doesn't value my physical self either? It was really, really surprising. And I also gave myself a big opportunity to test that, because it's what I suggest to clients often, which is, I went through long seasons where I would just wear incredibly casual and baggy clothes to everything, like to things where objectively speaking, it was inappropriate to wear the things that I wore. I very quickly came up with that whole concept of like, you have to protect your recovery no matter what. Like, even if it's like socially uncomfortable or whatever, like your recovery has to be protected. And that was part of what I had to do. I knew that I was easily triggered by wearing certain clothes or being in certain environments in certain clothes. And so I just would like wear this uniform. And via that, I figured out nobody also cared about that. Like people just wanted me to show up and to be there. It didn't matter. I didn't have to earn my place there with what my body looked like or what I adorned it with. I could just be as I was. And if I chose to then in my recovery go, I do want to play with clothes and I do want to express myself in this way, which I do now, it was because I would want to, not because I had an obligation to. It wasn't the price of entry to being with people or being comfortable with people.
And I always think it's so humbling, realizing that people don't care as much about us as we think they do.
Yes.
Like everyone's literally doing their own thing and in their own head. And I think it's like, it's kind of hilariously like low level narcissism of everyone who's like,
Main
people are
character
gonna really,
energy.
it's serious main character, which look, don't get me wrong, I love a bit of main character energy, but like, no one cares. Literally, no one cares. Everyone is like wrapped up in their own head or like their own drama. And I think that is just also like, it's just it's just such a display of humanness, I think. And like how just like all our inherent flaws of thinking everyone cares about us as much as like we do.
Yes.
I think this is sort of what you're saying there. It's another aspect why body image is a little bit tricky, because I think so many people who sort of engage with like, I need to work on body image. It's never just about solely working on body image. It's about working on your life, right? So often. And then subsequently, the body image work starts to make a lot more sense and it becomes more meaningful because you're seeing the positive flow of the effects of just like caring about yourself and your life more than you do about, having thin legs. I think, to make peace with your body is absolutely to make peace with yourself. When you actually really start shifting your life to filling it with more things that actually bring you joy and peace or, play or whatever it is. And you're like, you're going to the event, even to give yourself that evidence of like, people don't necessarily care what I look like. Like you have to be putting yourself out there, right? Like you have to like be in that arena to then get some of this like really, really useful evidence that you need about body image.
And the other thing is like, we have to take into account, of course, there's areas of marginalization here as far as, yes, fat phobia is a real thing.
Yes.
prejudice against different body sizes is a real thing. It is improving. It is improving. Would they get away with having Monica in a fat suit on Friends these days? No, they wouldn't. There would be a million articles and they would rewrite that storyline very, very quickly. Things have and are changing, but they're obviously still things that we have to take into consideration, but I still don't think that anyone is excluded from the personal body image work we can do. Yes, we've got to take into account some of the social and cultural ways that these things intersect with our personal experience. But at the end of the day, you are living your individual life in your day to day. You're not living in, the cacophony of this realm of social media, which is bombarding us with these messages all the time. In terms of your agency and your ability to go, I'm going to spend time with people who make me feel good. And it's about getting back to, as you say, like, I think body image is such an indicator of that whole, as we were saying, like the promise of eating disorder, which is like get all the external stuff and then the internal will shift, which is why in recovery, I really loved this quote by Eckhart Tolle, which is, if you get the inside right, the outside falls into place, which to me always meant if I get my sense of self and my value system and like purpose and meaning and all that stuff right, I won't care about the outside as much. Do you know what I mean? Like that's how I interpreted it. And I think that clients really struggle with that when they're still so hyper-focused and they're still so hyper-fixated and obsessed. It's so hard to imagine that A, your body's going to change, and then B, you're just not going to care as much then as you do now. That can be such a hard thing to grasp, especially it was hard for me because like I said, like I'd had this hyper focus and hatred of my body from a very young age. So whether or not it's you're reconnecting to better body image or you're building it for the first time, nobody is excluded from that. Even if you've never experienced it before, it can be created because, as you say, it's about these deeper things. It's not about having no feelings about your body or suddenly going from hating it to loving it overnight.
Exactly. I think an important message here is also just to realize that your worth is never going to be able to be stable if you're only seeking external things to give it that stability. What you really have to do is like figure out what has paved over this fertile ground that is stopping you from actually being able to connect with your inherent self-worth. Worth is not something to be earned. It often is something to be refound, right? Through removing these external layers of like, oh, if I have this job or if I have this body or if I, played this role in the world, this is going to be the thing that gives me the sense of safety and worth. And I think when people, we're telling them to totally like shift their approach to body and self and all of the like deep complexities that come into that about worth and safety and belief, of course they're going to be like, no, I don't believe that I'm going to feel differently about my body. And maybe I don't want to, because I think even when I say that to people, I'm like, no, like recovery is this thing where you have to let go of something in hope of something better and you don't get the better thing yet. And like, you kind of just have to like, believe me and like trust the process a little bit. They're like, fuck that. Like, why would I do that?
Yeah.
Because I also think even the idea of being like, oh my God, what if I was in a like larger body or a different body, recovered body, whatever it is, and I don't have this desire to change my body. I will like, they like fear that as well.
Yes, totally. They fear losing the desire to fit their body, which is like, and that's so indicative of how, mind-bending eating disorders are, where it's like, yes, but that's what you're in this whole process for, is to not have that focus and not to have that obsession, and you even fear losing that thing that you hate so much.
Exactly. And I think people forget to often link it to like, look at the quality of your life right now versus the potential of what the quality of your life could be. Because like we're saying, it is not normal to feel that immensely dissatisfied in your body. No one should have to be going through that much emotional internal turmoil, right? You should not have to sacrifice your body, your relationship with your body, your relationship with other people and self to be able to just slightly reduce the immense dissatisfaction. Like there actually is another way in body image, and what doing some of this work is that.
Yes. And it's so much about getting in initially, like on the ground practically. When I am first working with clients and managing some of those initial body image expectations, the word that, and anyone who's done my body neutrality workshop or like the recovery essentials or has worked with me directly will be so sick of this word, which is tolerance. That's about as much as I'm expecting from people, and they should be expecting from themselves, as far as where that we want them to be aiming for, mostly as far as how they feel about their body through the recovery process, which makes sense because we're changing a lot of our habits and our behaviors. And for people with that behavioral profile where body change is part of the process, that's going to happen too. So initially what we're trying to do is first cut off that distressed part of the end of the spectrum. And so much of that comes from body monitoring behaviors. Body checking, yes, but body checking kind of falls under body monitoring because body monitoring is a broader set of behaviors, like the classic ones like mirror checking, intentional mirror checking, going to one mirror or several mirrors in a row to sort of like check ourselves from different angles, checking specific body parts. It can be incidental mirror checking, which is you may come out and wash your hands in the bathroom and then notice you're hanging out at that mirror a bit longer than you ordinarily would because you're face checking and you didn't even notice that you were doing it. It can be things like grabbing, looking down at certain angles. Another body check is comparing to other people, walking into the room and trying to figure out where does your body sit amongst all the other bodies in the room. Or maybe you're comparing your body parts to other people's specific body parts. Photos, big one, current one and old ones. Even I know this is a sneaky one, people putting current photos and old photos next to each other in editing software and examining it. Yes. Something I did and something that I know clients do as well. There's a whole host of things that we do to body monitor, and there's some that you'll be aware of, and there's about 90% more that you're not even aware that you're doing. Body monitoring is one of the most insidious things that we do in our eating disorder because it becomes subconscious so quickly. It's something that becomes incredibly habitual and ingrained. And the problem with subconscious or ingrained behaviors is that they're triggering subconscious thoughts and feelings that you're not even aware of. So that crappy, constant, distressed, obsessed feeling about your body, you are engaging in behaviors throughout the day, which are sort of creating that feeling and creating those thoughts, but you don't have enough awareness of them to even be able to intervene with them, right? So what we're first doing with people is bringing it up to the surface so that you're aware, because you can't change what you don't acknowledge. You can't acknowledge what you're not aware of, right? So that's a big, if I were to encourage anyone who's like, well, there's so much, like we're talking about so much body image stuff, just starting with the practical stuff, and just focusing on getting yourself out of that distressed end of the spectrum, then there's some, all the great embodiment stuff and purpose and meaning. Getting yourself out of that distressed part of the spectrum, if that's all you're focusing on for a good section of your recovery, that is really worthwhile work to do. Because what it is essentially doing, it's like if you were sitting here and you had a car alarm going off on your street all day, you'd notice it for about the first half an hour. It would really piss you off and you would notice it. It would be on your mind. Your brain can't pay attention to it for that long, right? It's going to start to go into the back of your mind. You're still distressed by it. You're just not paying attention to it. It's the same thing with all of these insidious body checking behaviors. I'm so passionate about this because this is where we're letting people down. This is where people are going, we can't do body image stuff to the end. Bullshit. Not only can we must. This is where people are getting so stuck and regressing unnecessarily. Thank you for coming to my angry TED Talk.
I think you're so right because, realistically, like I was saying, that first year of my recovery, I wasn't doing any body image work. I was just trying to accept that I'd feel crap about my body forever. And it really wasn't until we started working together that I was like, oh, cool. Now I've got this actual bank of skills that makes me feel like I'm moving towards something, like I actually can be making change here. And then I think you're so right when you're able to pull yourself out of that distress tolerance and we've got even playing field of spectrum of emotional experiences towards body, we can be starting to relate to some of those different experiences in a new way, right? It'd be like, oh, it's a little alarm system of like, oh, I've had bad body image. Am I premenstrual? Did I not sleep very well? Am I stressed about something?
Yes.
Or whatever it is, and being able to look at it in a way that feels way more approachable as opposed to being like, oh my God, I can literally not do this. And it's the same thing. Sometimes it is going to be necessary for someone to be covering up mirrors and covering up surfaces when they're in that initial phase of trying to reduce the distress. And clients will be like, but isn't that avoidance? I'll be like, well, no, it's actually not. It's actually necessary for that period of the healing. Obviously, you're not going to cover up every mirror forever, but then you can try to be engaging with yourself and looking in the mirror, because naturally, you have to look in the mirror every now and then. Not as much as most people do, but sometimes it is necessary. I like us making sure we add seeds out of our teeth before coming on the podcast.
Yes,
Um,
sesame all through.
literally across the board.
Mouthful of sesame seeds.
But I think then you're able to just use those that exposure to your body is like it's literally exposure therapy, right? As opposed to being like re-triggering, re-traumatizing every time. So there is very much like approaches and ways that we can use to be able to help manage body image in just the day-to-day initial phases of recovery.
Yeah, it is short. It's like short-term avoidance to cut off the compulsion. It is compulsive, but I remember it. I went to every mirror in my house on repeat for hours trying to get a grasp on what I looked like. I just couldn't get clear on what I looked like. And the metaphor that I use is it's trying to get the view of the whole forest by being on the forest floor and walking closer and closer and closer to a tree trunk until your nose is pressed against the tree trunk and then being like, why can't I see the forest? Because you're compulsively getting closer and closer and closer to the thing that you're trying to see the whole picture of, right? And even beyond trying to see truly what your body looks like, you then also start to lose the perspective on like you're also a person. You're a person who's more than a body. And so that body is a part of your whole personhood, right? And so what all we're trying to do initially is to cut the compulsive behavior. It is not normal to be interacting with mirrors and photos and touching of the body and measuring and checking in that way. That is not normal. So when people are like, well, it's not normal to cover my mirrors, it's like temporarily we're doing something not normal to stop something else not normal.
Exactly. Because then I think that pushes you into this place where you have to focus more so on how your body feels, not having it how it looks as the only measure of how I feel about it.
Yes.
Because I think that is so valuable because when we're talking about the bodies, yes, we're in the eating disorder context and in, the like our day-to-day life, it is the physical body, but it's also important to, like you're saying, like to realize that, we traverse this planet. We, in terms of like, we are also like spiritual bodies and energetic bodies, emotional bodies, there's so much more to us than that sort of amounts to our completeness than just our physical body as well, right? Like you could see someone, they are literally looking the exact same as they did 3 hours ago, exact same outfit, looking the exact same, but they have a completely different energy, right? And they seem like a completely different person. Like people kind of forget that bodies are not just physical, right? Like I feel like also when someone is like magnetic, right? It's not because you're like, oh, they're conventionally beautiful. It's like, no, they're adding beauty to the world. They're moving in a beautiful way. Like their energy is beautiful. It's not like they have to be physically, aesthetically beautiful to be offering the world something. So I think that's just also another little point to remember in there.
Totally, because one of the big claims eating disorders make when we're going through that kind of like, what is your eating disorder doing for you work? Like what's its role? A big one for people is like, it makes me confident. And I'm like, great, let's talk about confidence. How would you identify that you are interacting with a confident person? What are some of the things you'd pick up on? They never mention bodies. They never mention appearance. They always say really self-assured person, someone who backs themselves, someone who moves with ease through the world. Like you can just tell that they're really anchored in themselves and really grounded. And I say to them, what if you found out that person had an eating disorder to be able to project that kind of, and that would you still use the word confident? No. Right. So it always comes down to like, okay, so your eating disorder values this body and it's even trying to perform confidence or happiness or self-acceptance or whatever. What is any of that worth if you don't get to feel any of it?
Yes.
What is the value of it's like having monopoly money? Like what is the point? Right? So I think that there's, so many different things that people can explore with body image. And yes, getting to that place of being able to experience embodiment differently and connect it all back to all those things of sort of those deeper layers of what it is to be a person with a body and not the other way around, right? But to not be daunted by the process because we do have skills, but we also then have these wonderful things that we can do to explore the next layer and the next step, where I just think people are really undersold what's possible here and then told that that's limited to people in certain bodies. And in terms of the colleagues that I have and the friends that I have and the family members that I have and in all the range of bodies they have, I just have not seen that to be true because body image is such a personal journey for people. And I don't think it's up to anyone to tell anyone else what the limit on that journey should be.
Exactly. And I think just, something I'd always come back to is like, there's just nothing more important than my peace.
Mm,
Feeling, immense dissatisfaction with my body is not that. There is nothing peaceful about that.
yeah. Beautiful. Fabulous. So we will be back in a couple of weeks with another episode. We have the retreat coming up.
Ooh.
So we'll probably have a chat after this recording as to how we schedule podcast things. But if we miss an episode in the coming weeks, please do forgive us. We're going to be a little bit busy behind the scenes, but we'll have some cool stuff to share with you when we're back.
Yeah, we're super excited for this retreat as well. And then also, if you are interested in coming to a Beyond Body retreat, we do have tickets available for Bali, which is happening next year. So if you want to come and have more cups of tea and hang out with us, you can definitely grab a ticket to that.
Yes, some of those rooms are gone, but they're all phenomenal, beautiful
Yeah.
rooms. So you've got your pick of what's left, and they are all stunning. So yeah, we're very, very excited about all the stuff that we've got coming up. We've got so many things that we have to plan, and it is very quickly getting at the end of the year. What's something that you're really excited about for the November retreat?
I think because, on this retreat, it's actually all of our clients coming. So I think just being able to like get to spend intimate one-on-one time with clients who we have worked with for, some of them for years, and this is really sort of this end point of their healing is super, super special. So I think that, and also like November in Australia, happy to be here.
Yeah.
I'm just ready for something beautiful sun and like beautiful meals out. I've been very inspired with the menu post spending a month in Italy. So I'm also like super excited for the food.
Well, I'm always excited for the food because it is unreal. That lamb dish, I like when you were like, so we're gonna keep the lamb. I was like, yes, we're gonna keep the lamb. We don't keep the lamb. Why are we doing it? But yeah, I similar to you also because we've got two people coming from this from the States, from the US, and that's always really exciting to like show off a little bit of, this very special part of Australia, right? I try not to make any promises about wildlife. Like when we do the little bushwalk, I'm like, don't mention wallabies or kangaroos because that will be the day that we don't see anything. Really, really excited to get this amazing group together. I think it's going to be, I mean, they're all magical because just this group of people who are meant to be together tend to come together. We don't do anything that intentional, but we always just get this amazing mix of people who were meant to meet.
Yeah, it'll be super special.
Yeah, fabulous. Alrighty, well, we will see you all in a couple of weeks. And as always, let us know your thoughts in the comments. I'll see you soon, huh?
See you next time.